Hey, sorry for the delay. I was actually going to eat on time for once, and then my internet didn't seem to be working. So, but thankfully, I think we've got it going. Oh, my joke. Yeah, I think we've got it going. Hopefully, it won't cut out in the middle. But if the stream sort of just goes dead or ends early, that's why. But yeah, fingers crossed that won't happen. I think we'll be okay. I think I restarted my computer. That seemed to fix it. So probably was just due for a restart. Anyway, so we're back at it, as always, with the wool. I'm getting really excited to finish this stuff up. I was thinking about, because the plan was sort of to potentially spin another singles rather, and then use that to play with this so that we could keep the, I don't know, keep the color progression, I guess, and also keep a decent amount of yardage. And that way it'll be a little more consistent, because I think if I chain plied this, we would have some much thinner sections. Very thicker ones. So yeah, that's the idea. But that said, I realized I would either have to wind all of this off, or I would have to. Well, I think I just have to wind it off. Because otherwise I would only have one bobbin, and then I'd have to wind off all the cotton I was spinning instead, which is much worse. Like that would be even more winding over time. Alternately, I guess I could dedicate, the stream where we finish this up to also spinning the ply, but I don't know. I don't want to take a break from cotton, so I'm almost wondering if we'll just 3-ply it, like chain ply it, just so that we don't impede our cotton progress. I don't really want to sacrifice it like that, but I have a feeling I might end up doing that anyway. I guess my only other option would be to spin a comparable amount to this on supported spindles, and leave this in the meantime. But that does not really sound like something I want to do right now. It would be pretty slow, and then I would still only have one bobbin. Not that I anticipate needing more than 2 bobbins for any cotton spinning. Okay, I just figured out what that squeaking is. It's the wheel, sort of going to the wrong side. I wonder what I can do to fix it. Possibly that little bit of adjustment was enough, I'm not sure. Yeah, I think so. Well, that's nice. Nope, it's back at it. At least I know what it is, though. That should kind of help. I've been wondering what the hell was making that noise for a long time, let me tell you. Part of the issue is that kind of most of this doesn't really fit that well. It's despite the fact that I bought this new from Kromsky in about 2019, it's very poorly made, which is a bit of a bummer. Doesn't really impact most things, but I end up with annoying little problems like this occasionally. And I can also only use 2 of my lazy Kates, even though there are 3 of them, just due to very bad engineering. Which is not to say I don't like my wheel, but I'm annoyed at Kromsky is what it is. I don't think I would ever buy another Kromsky wheel after this. Well, no, I definitely would never buy another Kromsky wheel. Because I'd be shocked if I bought another wheel, period. But if I did, would never ever go for Kromsky again. I'm sure they've made some decent wheels out there. I just have not experienced them. Experienced crappy wheels only. And it kind of annoys me because it means that the resale value of this sort of plummets. And I know I'm going to hit a point where I can't use this anymore, and I'd like to resell it. but I just won't be able to get very much for it, which is quite frustrating. But that was also on me for going for a new wheel. I didn't find anything like nearby on Ravelry in terms of used wheels. I didn't want to wait for the Fiber Festival, like 4 or 5 months down the line. So I just bought a new one, and I should have waited because those used ones are typically much better made if they've stuck around that long. Um, and as long as you don't get an antique one, like, yeah, they're going to be a lot better made. And then they're also usually much cheaper, probably like a third of the price that I paid for this. That's like a fairly expensive used wheel price, about $200 here. Whereas I paid almost 800 for this wheel. It was a poor financial decision. I do love my wheel, but I wouldn't do it again. I don't know. You live and learn, I guess. It's not exactly a problem. But yeah, I certainly use suggestions on how to deal with this whole singles and limited bobbins. And I have multiple projects going at once, and I don't have enough bobbins to actually do this correctly, or do it the way that I planned at least. I'm not really sure. I know I'll come up with something eventually, but at the moment, no idea. The other thing is, I'm not really sure what would be like good colors to use to play with this. I have more of a lot of this stuff, especially the like lighter green / blue and the darker green blue. I don't know what color it actually is. I have a ton more of that, but I don't really have many plans for anymore. So that's an option. I don't know how interesting it would be or how much it might mess up the gradient I've got going though. And I also, if I two-ply this, I don't know what the hell I'm ever going to do with it. Other than sell it, I think. I think I will actually just have to sell it if I two-ply this. Because there's just no way. Yeah, there's no way that I would ever use it. If I were much of a lace knitter or a shawl knitter, maybe. But I don't. They really intimidate me, if I'm being honest. I've always liked the idea of making shawls, and I did some work on learning how to spin, learning how to knit a hap, which is a type of shawl from the Shetland Islands. And I love the history of it and the fact that it's like a very functional shawl. You know, it doubles as a blanket or a baby blanket or something to sit on, like, or a shawl. Very versatile. Absolutely love that because I don't think I'd wear just a normal shawl. I don't think I'd get much use out of it. But obviously, I'll use a blanket. But I, I don't know. I started and undid that project several times because I just could not figure out how to turn a corner while working in shell lace. Couldn't do it. I tried so hard. Maybe I could if I did some more lace practice, but I just, it requires so much more thought while you work than I am able to put into my knitting. I think that's the crux of it. Like, it's not that it would be impossible for me to figure out lace stitches or even impossible for me to read a pattern, although patterns are pretty difficult for me. It's just like I can't think that hard when I'm knitting. I don't know. I don't think I can think that hard at any time at this point. So I just really prefer to stick to easy, somewhat more instinctual stuff. Like socks, for example, I reference a pattern and I might take some notes, but the pattern I'm referencing is my own, and the notes I'm taking are only to ensure that the second sock matches the first one. And that's like, socks are about as complex as I get, and they're really not complex once you learn how to make them. They're quite simple, quite formulaic, still very enjoyable, but really not hard. I've heard other people say that about sweaters, although I don't know if I can agree with that one. I feel like you put so much more work into your average sweater that if you are off, it is kind of a big deal when you have to frock it. Or at least it's a bigger deal. Whereas socks are so small. It's really like, oh no, you did the heel incorrectly, now you have to frog the heel. But that's what, like an hour of work at most if you're really uncomfortable turning a sock heel or using very fine yarn. And an hour of work isn't too bad to frog, but like 10 hours of work, I would be a little upset, especially if I had to do that multiple times. And knowing me, I would. I am a frog 5 to 6 times per project kind of guy, if I'm being honest. There are some that I don't frog that many times, but I think it's typical that I frog a project. Not fully, but like go back at least a while. Undo too much of it that like tinking would be work, I do that probably 5 or 6 times a project. The good news is it becomes a lot easier to put the work back on the needles after so much practice. I don't dread that part at all. I don't think I dread any part of frogging at this point. It's all fine. Unless it's like, unless I'm on frog attempt number 6, at that point I'm usually getting a little frustrated. But generally speaking, it's like half the time I don't even care what the finished object turns out as. I just want to be working on something. Like I just need something to do with my hands. So for that metric, I don't think it's such a big deal for me to frog things. But yeah, something as time consuming as a sweater, I think my tune would be a little different. Getting there with this wool certainly helps that I actually have it on the correct bobbin setting or flyer setting this time. So we should not have to go back and redo a whole bunch of it. Or not redo, but respin anyway, which was a little bit annoying. I'm pretty happy that on the middle whorl, because I think otherwise I would have spent a long time, if not indefinitely, stayed on the biggest whorl doing cotton, because that middle whorl was not working out for me for such a long time. But I guess I left it on there on accident at just the right time for it to all work out. I already washed, dried, and knit up a sample of the skein we did yesterday. And I think it is great. At this point, I just want to, there's really only 2 more questions that I need answered by my cotton before I feel comfortable starting this project, other than the dye stuff, which I'm not going to wait on that. I've decided we're just going to go for it. Who cares? But yeah, those 2 questions are, 1, is it better to have a lot of tension or only a little tension when rolling up punis? So I'm going to sort of experiment today with how much tension I add and see what comes out the cleanest. And then my second question is, how much cotton is the optimal amount to load it with? So that's what we're going to try on, I think probably we'll stream tomorrow. So on tomorrow's stream, we'll figure that out. And then we'll be ready to get going, pretty much. So I guess I could use the interim of like sort of have a break from my experiments to briefly finish up this wool yarn. I guess I could do that, because we're basically reaching the finishing point where it won't be experiments anymore. It's just going to be a long haul project, which I am very excited for, because I have not done a long haul project in a long time. But from these samples, I think it's going to go well. Like, I have hope. The reason I'm doing all of this experimentation, by the way, is because the last summer blanket that I made, was hand-spun flax, and I spun out the flax for TDF. So I was much more concerned with questions like, how fast can I get this done? And how do I stop this from shredding my fingers? And I wasn't really thinking about sampling or figuring out the best way to use that fiber. And I think like my spinning suffered for it. I think it really suffered for it. I think if I had actually done some experimentation, I would have had a much nicer end result. And additionally, I never really did any wear tests, and it turns out that thick spun flax, it's not very durable. So the blanket that I spent multiple years on and made my fingers bleed is probably not going to be much of an heirloom. Which it's not that everything I make needs to be an heirloom. I'm sure most of it will get thrown away or donated after I pass, but like it's already in worse condition. You can already tell it's in worse condition after a couple of years, and that should not be the case with flax. So I made a big error when I did all of that flax spinning, thinking that I could spin it as thick as I did. And I just did a 2-ply, like a thick 2-ply that resulted in approximately a worsted weight. It was just a huge mistake. So I wanted to make sure that I'm not making that mistake again with this cotton. And in the process, I've learned I really, really enjoy doing this sort of experimentation. So I think the next fiber I learn, if there is one, because I could see myself just spinning cotton, flax, and wool for quite a long time and being very happy with that. But if I do try to learn another fiber, I'm going to do the same sort of thing because this has been a blast. Really enjoyed it. I hope you all have also enjoyed it. I'm guessing, based on the number of people who have stopped by, that most people seem to be enjoying it, at least enough to take a look every time I stream. So yeah, it's been super fun. I wouldn't mind figuring out silk. I wouldn't mind. I mean, I really want to. I don't know if I can. It seems like it requires a fair amount of strength, at least the methods that I've come across. Hopefully there's methods that don't, but if it all requires quite a bit of hand strength, then that's not happening. And I do at some point I was planning on rushing it and just getting into it, but I ended up not doing that. I want to figure out how milkweed spins up on the cotton cards, because I've only ever processed it on my wool cards, and it was just a nightmare. And I was barely able to spin like 4 or 5 yards. I don't even think I did spin 4 or 5 yards. I think I had to end it before that because it wouldn't hold that much twist before it snapped, and that's a really difficult thing to maneuver with spinning. Like fibers that are suitable for spinning don't do that. There's always a threshold of how much twist you can add to a fiber before it snaps. If I were to just like wail on the treadle wheel for a while and not actually draft anything, I would eventually add enough twist that this snapped. But you shouldn't be reaching that point in a spinnable fiber before you've reached a decent amount of twist that holds the yarn together. That sort of indicates it's not a very spinnable fiber. But it's quite possible that the majority of that was due to the fact that I really couldn't prepare it. So yeah, I'm hoping at some point I'll be able to get into that, and maybe if we can actually crack it through experimentation, that would be awesome. I'd love to try, but I'm so stuck in my cotton right now. I really I do not want to stop spinning cotton. I'm enjoying it so much. So I cannot imagine like moving on to another fiber instead of getting this going. So yeah, we're certainly not going to do that. Not right now, at least. All right. So just let me turn this towards me a little more so you can maybe actually see what I'm doing. That's always preferred. So I'm gonna try and, like, if I had been thinking, once I figured out how to spin cotton, probably the next thing I should have done was figure out the optimal amount so that I was using that every time. But I just don't feel like pulling out my scale, so I haven't. So we're putting that off to the end. So I'm just gonna go with, like, I have a vague idea of what the optimal amount is. Like, give or take several grams, I think. So I want to know more, but at the moment, we're just going to go with what looks decent and just work on that. Now you'll notice I'm still loading it like this, all the way to from the base to the top, but then leaving about an inch on either side where I have no fiber. The reason for leaving the inch is if I don't leave it, then I won't actually work on the fiber on the sides because it'll just start sort of going off the ends like this, like diagonally. It'll go like that. And then there's no way at all to actually work that fiber except by pushing it back into place, and you'll have to do that every pass. And it's not the way to go. Not at all. And then the reason that I'm going all the way to the base instead of simply packing more fiber on top and keeping it in the first inch or two of the cards, because that's what it turns into after the first pass, as you can see. It's now just entirely focused up here with a tiny bit of stragglers at the bottom. But if you put it on there like that to begin with, you will encounter the problem of the first pass will just be entirely reseating the fiber because it's not stable like that. And it seems that if you just, like, if you don't overload it but still only use the first couple of inches, then that's not enough fiber. So as far as I can tell, this method seems to be the way to go. Or at least I haven't had any, I had a much faster time doing this since I started. So, all right. So we're going to do some loose tension, and I think what I'm going to do is spin the puni and then make another one, so that I'm getting feedback on how much tension I can add quicker, like while I still can do something with it. Because if I did all of them at once, like I have been doing the last couple of days, then I think we wouldn't actually learn very much. So this one, I'm kind of doing, like, I'm pulling some, but then when I actually roll it, I'm just rolling it up pretty lightly without very much tension at all. And then I'm just gonna sort of smooth it out on the cards briefly. Okay, so this, if you take a look at this, this is very different from the other punis I've done recently. This one immediately starts frowning. And when I held it the first time, it sort of wilted. So it's got a decent frown to it, and it's pretty thick for the amount of fiber that's actually in it. So we're going to see how this spins up. I'm quite curious. I really did not think that looser would be better, and I have a feeling that looser is only better for thick spinning, because I've done looser already. I've done it already when I was trying to spin cotton thread, and that did not work at all. So I'm wondering if the tighter the prep, the more suited it is for fine spinning, and vice versa. That's my guess. And I would like to test that too. I've got, of course, ample cotton to test it with, and some more bird spindles. I haven't done any fine cotton spinning in a little while because I've been so obsessed with this. But yeah, that's my theory, is the tighter the prep, the finer the actual spin. Or at least more suited it is for a finer spin. So this one, of course, is very, very open. Compared to all of my other ones, I would say it might even be the most open, and it might be too open. I don't know. That's what we're going to find out, is how open is too open. And also, I'm wondering, is drafting it out the right move, or do I want to just roll it and not draft it at all? And maybe I add a little more tension when rolling, but you know, because I'm not drafting, that's quite a bit less tension. I'm not sure. Actually, now that I think about it, I also wanted to test left or like if I should spin clockwise or counterclockwise. So that we'll have to do one more. I guess we have 3 more questions that need to be answered. So first, we'll just get this seated, like we always do. What I'm doing right now is just equalizing the twist. That is one of the drawbacks. There's a few. Because one of the drawbacks of not ever using a leader is that you have to equalize the twist in that manner. That's a little bit awkward. But I don't find it to be too terrible, if I'm being honest. I mean, obviously, I enjoy it. I feel like it gives me a good feel for how the fiber is going to behave before I've even got anything on the wheel, which isn't bad. It's sometimes if I can't get it on the wheel, then I know like something needs to change before I waste any more of my fiber. Oh, and it already broke. Okay. Off to a good start. I think I need to reduce tension by a bit. Oh yeah, by a lot actually. That was the problem for sure. Okay, I think there's mostly drawbacks to not using a leader, but the problem is I don't like using a leader. Oh, no wonder I'm spinning in the wrong direction. That would do it. We're using Ciarl's method for joining cotton, and it works so well. I'm so glad that they told me about it. Okay. So, all right, now I can up the tension a little bit. The interesting thing about cotton is that it doesn't need a lot of tension to still create quite a bit of drag. Like at the moment, my tension is just enough that the string isn't bowing, but it's not really like otherwise. There's really very little friction happening. But first, damn it, I'm going the wrong way again. Ugh. Why do I keep doing that? For some reason, it doesn't need it, and it still creates a decent amount of drag. I really don't know why. This is definitely spinning up finer than I've been going for. Add a little more tension and see if we can recreate the thicker stuff, because this is blowing my theory into shreds right now, as most of these experiments have done. And I also wonder if maybe it'll bloom more or less depending on tension. Like, I don't know, I guess I wonder what factor is it that influences how much it blooms, because they've bloomed different amounts with washing. I think I just have to be a little bit more careful with this. So that makes me think there is not enough tension, because it's really not controlling itself as it comes out like the other ones have been. And so instead I'm having to control it, which isn't really what I'm going for. But now I feel like I've sort of gotten into a rhythm, and it's going a bit better. It's thicker and more even, which is what we're going for. But I think, yeah, next one will add a little more tension. I think this was too little tension to really control it, because it doesn't feel like it's behaving. Some of these have really behaved very nicely, and some of them have behaved absolutely terribly. And we want to figure out the secret to making these behave every time. Oh, hey, Zertra. Sorry about that. There was a notification right in front of the chat, and I didn't even realize it was a notification. No, I'm not playing. We just started spinning the very first puni. I hope you aren't waiting a long time. Sorry about that. This whole, like recently, I have not been able to notice when the first chat comes in. Just due to a series of ridiculous mishaps. So, yeah, I don't know. Don't worry. All right, that sounds like it was a while. I do keep accidentally spinning it the wrong way, as you probably have seen by now. And that is not helping. So I'm like trying to focus every time I stop and make sure I spin it the right way. So I started knitting up those washcloths out of the yarn. And I actually don't have any yarn now. I just have washcloths. And one of them is in progress, but I've done all the others. And they turned out really nicely. I was not using the needle that I intend to use on the blanket, simply because I don't think they'd make good washcloths at that point. So, yeah, but at the moment, they look great. I'm very excited to use them, even more excited to wash them, actually, because I think they'll probably puff up a bit, or at least I assume. I'm actually really curious how much they puff up. And I'll certainly have to do a swatch at some point to figure out, like, you know, what size needle will actually get me what I want. I hope it's the size that I have in the 36-inch circ, because I only have that one big size. I'll probably use that no matter what, but still, I'd like to know. Anyway, I'll show those probably when they're done. I don't know if showing them on screen is necessarily worthwhile due to the webcam difficulties that we always have. So more tension this time, I think, is what we're gonna need. I don't know how much more, so I think I'm just gonna sort of gradually, we'll use that as the least possible amount of tension. And we'll just gradually up it and see when we get to a point where it's actually coming out nice and smooth and behaving well. And when it does that, then we'll do a few more to confirm that that's actually it rather than a fluke. And yeah, so we might not stick with 6 this time. We might go more. I don't think we'll do less. I think 6 is nice for washcloths of the size I'm making. And I also really want to spin a little extra and make a few for my mom. Because Mother's Day is coming up, and I feel like it's not a bad gift. Well, from me, anyway. It's pretty expected at this point that I give some weird ass fiber arts gift. You know, I can't even use the excuse of I had a difficult morning or I had a rough day at work. So I don't know what my problem is dropping everything and forgetting everything. That might just be me and how I usually am. A little bit less aware of it when I'm not on stream, for sure. Okay. So I'm putting a decent amount of effort into drafting it still. but then I'm just rolling it somewhat loosely. Last time I was rolling it really loosely. Now I'm not rolling it quite so loose. I worry I'm going a little too tight. I don't know. I think it'll do. Okay. Yeah. So this time, it's not frowning immediately, but if you hold it by one end, then it frowns immediately. So, then it frowns immediately. So, it's definitely got more tension. You know nothing of tension. Is it a wheel thing, or have you just avoided that? Tension is a term that's used in fiber arts in like many different disciplines, and so it means a different thing in each discipline. And that even includes fiber prep as its own discipline. So in fiber prep, and in this particular situation, when I say tension, what I mean is how hard I am pulling back when I roll it up, and how much force, I suppose, has been used to actually roll everything up and do that little bit of drafting. That's what I'm referring to in this situation. I don't know if tension is necessarily the only word or even the right word, but it feels like what I should be saying. But then meanwhile, for example, in knitting, tension is how much friction you're putting on the yarn or how tight you're holding the yarn, depending on how you tension. In my case, I don't hold the yarn, I just wind it between my fingers, and that creates friction. So I don't have to put any effort into it. And then in weaving, for example, tension might refer to warp tension, or it might refer to any number of things, but typically warp tension. So yeah, I think tension is just sort of an important concept in fiber arts, generally speaking, but it means a different thing in each discipline. That makes sense. Yeah. Now, hopefully we can get this to work. Or rather, to stop squeaking, because I'm done with the squeaking at this point. Yeah. I think I might just need to add a washer or two. I didn't need it in the past, but I can imagine that as this thing ages, it'll need a little bit of maintenance. It's about five or 6 years of use on it now, which isn't that much in the grand scheme of things, but it's not nothing. No, I lost it. I haven't come to a consensus on this one yet. I need to spin a little more, but so far it feels like it's behaving more. But unfortunately, I can't tell if I need to go up or down in tension. And I think I skipped a couple of potential grades in there, if that makes sense, between the first row or the first puni and the second one that we're doing now. I think I could have gone much lighter on the tension and still had heavier tension than the first one. But this isn't terrible. I just don't know how much better it is than the first one. Somewhat better, but not like a ton. By the time I got to the end, it was really behaving, if I'm being honest. It seems to take me a minute or two to really like dial in on what I'm doing and on how exactly it's behaving. And I'm just opening my sparkling water. These streams are also great for making sure I stay hydrated because talking so much makes me very thirsty. It's the same at work, honestly, because I'm talking all day at work too. This again. So what are you working on today, Zertra, if anything? I think I might be overfilling these cards a tiny bit because I keep having this, like, for one thing, I'm not positive I'm actually getting it all done in those 2 passes when I know that it's possible. So I might have to lay off a tiny bit on the cards. That might be the source of some of my issues. Nothing right now. You just visited friends today. That sounds nice. Okay, I think I'm going to try doing something in between the first and the second one, if I can, in terms of how much tension. And if that's worse, then we'll go up a tiny bit. I'd really like to dial in on this fairly quickly, but I know I have no actual control over that. It is what it is, so. Oh, actually, should not have moved that yet. You should get back to your spindle and in days to come to try more dyeing. Ooh, nice. Dyeing is always so fun. I'm really excited for spring. I mean, there is spring right now, but I'm excited, I guess, for the beginning of summer, maybe, because a whole bunch of dye materials sort of come out around then, just in my local area. And I really, really want to try dyeing cotton with them. I've already done pretty much all of the ones that I've found with wool, but I know that you get different results in terms of color, but then also in terms of saturation and other things, depending on the actual fiber content. I've done so little cotton that, yeah, it's all very new to me. All right, let's see. So this one, I keep dropping this. Somewhat annoying. All right, this one, I keep dropping this. Somewhat annoying. All right, this one, I think that's a decent in between. It's not too bad. We'll have to see. Does it even? Oh, you only tried dyeing once, but it made you gleeful. You want to try it more? Yeah, I know the feeling. It's like unlocking colors via plants. It's just the coolest fucking thing in the world. Does it even work like wool? No. Like yes and no, I guess. Fundamentally, yes, it's the same process. But in terms of whether it behaves like wool, no, not at all. It's nothing like wool from my experiments. To be Like, to be clear, I don't know cotton that well, but I do know wool really well. Wool will behave different ways depending on breed. And in a lot of cases, crossbreeds can end up with some really interesting things happening. Like, I have a Clun Forest and Shetland cross that I dyed. I've dyed a lot of it at this point, different colors. And it it behaves so strangely, unlike any other wool I've ever used. So each time you work with wool, each breed is going to be different. I find that the color won't necessarily be different from sheep to sheep. That's one of the few things that doesn't differ sheep to sheep. The dyeing experience tends to stay the same. But breed to breed, it definitely does. So, but then cotton is just like the outcome is not ever what I am expecting. It's never what I've carefully curated the wool outcome to be. And it requires different mordants and yields different colors in a lot of cases. Not in all cases. It does depend somewhat. This is running pretty thin. I'm having some difficulty controlling it. So I drafted this one out pretty nicely and then rolled it up with no tension. And I don't know if that's the way to go. I'm thinking not, but it'll probably come down to the last half of the punis, as they all have. Good to know. Yeah. It's such a, I don't want to say complex hobby, because I don't think it's that complex, but it is incredibly nuanced and really fun to figure out. You'll enjoy it, like all the subsequent dyeing attempts. I feel like the more I learn, the more I enjoy it, because I'm a little bit more able to get what I want, at least with natural dyeing. I don't know anything at all about non-natural dyeing, like literally nothing. So I'm not the best person to ask about that. But when it comes to natural dye, getting consistent colors is really quite difficult. And sometimes impossible, because the color is just going to change year to year. That part is unavoidable. So the more you learn, though, the easier it is to figure out how to consistently get the color that you want. And you start sort of understanding how each individual plant works and how it wants to be used. And yeah, it's such a rush. Absolutely love it. I think the feeling of getting close to the plants is one of my favorite feelings. But then also the feeling of discovering these colors, because they're not necessarily colors that you've seen before or noticed or cared about. Like an off green, like how often have you looked at an off green and been like, wow, that's awesome? Probably not super often. But when you make it yourself, suddenly it's a lot more awesome. This is not too terribly bad. Now that I've reached near the end and I'm a little bit more comfortable with it, it's not too terribly bad, but it's also, I think, not perfect. I kind of want to try the next one, rolling it with high tension, but not drafting it much at all. Like doing as little drafting as I possibly can, and see if that makes it noticeably worse or noticeably better. You find it dizzying that wool can differ from sheep to sheep. We use wool everywhere, and it comes from an individual. Yeah, I know, it is crazy. Like, every time you spin, it's going to be different, because the sheep are their own animals, and their hair follicles will always behave in their own weird little ways. Like, if nothing else, there's always that. It is very cool. Dyeing is a very rich topic. I think that's a good way of putting it. There's just sort of these endless rabbit holes you can jump down. There's always more plants that you'll learn about, even if there's not an endless number of native plants that are uh, suitable dye materials near you. You know, there's not everywhere has native plants. You'll always find some import that can be dyed. So it just goes on and on. It's very cool. I think dyeing is maybe the other great love of my life. If spinning is the first one, dyeing might be the second one. It's just such a good way to spend your time, among other things. Okay, so what did I say? I think I said very little drafting, but then high tension when I roll it. I don't know how I'm going to achieve that, actually. Typically when I roll it, I'm not putting a ton of tension in, because I don't know how. So we'll have to work on that. Right, okay. So I've drafted just enough to get it to bite, because that is kind of critical. If you can't get it to bite, then you're not really going to make anything, or at least you won't be able to roll it. And then I did some decently high tension when I did roll it. I could have gone higher, because I didn't want to do as high as I possibly could. But it's not frowning too bad. If I hold one end, it frowns. But if I hold it in the, well, no. If I hold it in the middle, it also frowns. But it's not frowning quite as much as I thought it would. I thought it was possible it would have no structural integrity at all, because I've been under the impression for a while, and then that bubble sort of burst in the last couple of spinning sessions. I was under the impression that you have to add that sort of drafting tension if you're going to get anything spinnable at all. I was absolutely under that delusion, I think. It's definitely not true. I don't know the extent to which it's not true. And I was talking about it earlier in the stream. I think that the best prep for thick spinning cotton is not the best prep for spinning cotton thread. I think that, or at least my theory, because I've done a fair amount of testing for thread at this point, and a fair amount of testing for this, for thick spinning. My theory is that the more tension you add to the puni, in whatever manner you're adding it, the more suitable it is for fine spinning. And the less tension you add, the more suitable it is for thick spinning. That's my theory. I'm very curious about if that's true or not, or if it's unrelated. I would be a little surprised if it was, because I've had no luck at all spinning cotton thread from like a very loose puni. It just doesn't work. But that could be an experience. You never know. I don't think I'm still dealing with inexperience when it comes to cotton thread, but yeah, you really never know. I don't know about this. I think drafting it at least a little bit is kind of important. Of course, that said, I did just get a really nice thick section that was pretty even. What I'm learning is that cotton is less picky than I thought, but more skill is required to make it go well than I thought. Because it doesn't seem to be all too picky to get a spinnable fiber, even if it's not like even. It's not that picky, but it is really picky about who's spinning it, apparently. Because not a whole ton has changed in my technique. Some stuff for sure has changed, but mostly it's just my skill and understanding of it has changed drastically. And it kind of feels like that has a much bigger impact than anything else I'm doing. Which is interesting because I really think that's the opposite of true for wool. I mean, knowing how to spin it is very important, and knowing how to prep it is very important. but a bad prep is just going to be a pain in the ass no matter what. You can get around it if you know what you're doing with wool, but it's still going to be a pain in the ass. It's just that you can overcome it. But like the prep is just so much more critical with wool, as far as I can tell. It's just really funny. I never would have guessed. I always think of wool as, I mean, it's odd to think of wool in terms of a monolith because it's such a not monolith. But when I do think of wool as a monolith, I think of it as fairly easygoing, not too fussy. And because there are so many different ways that wool can be, it's incredibly all-purpose. Like wool as a category, all-purpose, because you'll always find some specialty braid that will do what you want perfectly. But you also have to know the specialty braids. You're doing a bit. I don't know. I do love wool. What more can one say? Okay. So now that I've reached the end, I don't think that, I don't think adding no drafting tension works. Or like it works, but I don't think it's optimal. That's the right way to put it. So we're going to go back to adding a bit of drafting tension. Yeah, we'll just keep going, keep seeing how it ends up. I think that the attempt before this most recent one was pretty damn good. I really liked that one, but I don't really remember what I did. I think I did a fairly light tension on both. So yeah, I don't know. That's what I'll try, I guess. I think what I'm really excited for about early summer, like the thing I'm most excited for in terms of dye materials is buckthorn berries. There were 2 of them outside the house I lived in last year, but I've moved since then. It turns out that there's a whole bunch down the street too, from where I live now. And they are in front of a stranger's house, but I will not let that stop me. It's not in their yard, which means it's public property. So I'm taking it. I'm going to pick a few at least. I got such good colors with buckthorn berries last year, and I was doing some good experimentation with it. The only thing about buckthorn berries is you get better color when it's really young. And so you have to work really fast if you want to do like some good experimentation or a lot of work. And that's not true of most other dye materials I've used. Yeah, they don't tend to get worse as they come in over the year. Typically, you can just sort of harvest all year. Like when it comes to marigolds, for example, you harvest them as they come out, as the flowers bloom, because the more you harvest, the more flowers it'll put out. So you want to be continually harvesting, and then you can just sort of dry them as they come out, or if you have a ton of marigolds, you can also, just do a batch each time of varying sizes depending on how much you have. And with things like avocados, where you're not necessarily, at least in my case, because avocados do not grow where I live, you're just buying them from the store, and you can save the dye material for later, just in the fridge or even on the counter. And those, like, they get worse with time, but very predictably so. It's more like as the dye material itself ages and sets out for longer and longer, it gets worse and gets a bit more brown rather than the light pink that you can get. So yeah, buckthorn berries seem to be somewhat singular in that respect. I'm sure there are other plants that are like that, just I haven't encountered them. So it's like very high incentive to get it right, because you will not have that color 2 months from now, or maybe even 1 month from now, or even a week from now. And it seems like the blues from buckthorn berries, blue being an incredibly hard color to get, and at the moment only obtainable locally with buckthorn berry skin, you can only get those blues in the first like couple of weeks of it going on. After that, you're just getting off greens, sort of like light cyans. Do I need a lot of avocado skins to dye? You could try that. You eat enough avocado quickly enough. Nice. No, you don't. And you can also use the pits. So that adds a lot of material in there. I think the pits have more color than the skins, but I recommend saving both, because the more you have per weight of fiber, the more the more saturated you're going to get, and you can get these really beautiful sort of dusty pinks that are just incredible. The only thing is, you want to make sure you are washing the avocado out really well as soon as you've scraped it out. So like you can't come back to that later. You have to do it then and there. Any oil that is, any flesh that's remaining, basically the oil in there will cause problems and make it brown when you actually go to work with it. So yeah, you have to clean it really well, but it's a great dye material. It doesn't smell particularly terrible, as many of them do, and it's such a beautiful color. I mean, I'm a big fan of pink anyway, but it's like avocado pink is my favorite pink by far. I hope you do get a chance to try it. Highly recommend. So with that last one, it sort of started coming off the card immediately. And so I ended up not being able to put in as much drafting twist as I wanted to. And the first part of this was spinning up really nicely, and the second part really badly. And I noticed that when I was doing it that only half of it really came off the cards. But I also don't know which end I'm spinning right now. I don't know if I'm spinning the end that came off the cards or the end that didn't, which is a little frustrating. I wish I had kept track of that slightly better. I'm sure I'll figure it out regardless, but we're approaching 6. We have one more and then we'll be on 6. And I don't want to do like 10 or 12 if I can help it. I'm very tired already. And I certainly want to get this plied and washed and everything before I actually, before I come back to the stream, you know. We'll give it a try. Sweet. If you want to, if you end up posting the results on Tumblr, please feel free to tag me. I would love to see it. I can't wait for avocado season here. I'm a huge avocado fan. They're just not good where I live for most of the year. Like, if you can find them in the store, they're very overpriced and they're really gross. So there's really only a good time of year to buy it in the summer. Wow, that went really fast. I was not thinking super hard during that one. Just daydreaming about dying things. So yeah, I'm gonna try it again. The problem is there's a lot of variables, and I'm still not good enough at this to be able to control all of them. I still need a lot more practice. And so we're once again running into the issue of I don't know what I'm doing enough to really be able to effectively experiment. Which is, I mean, it's not my favorite problem to have, but at least it's fixable just by doing more. So it's entirely possible that we'll be doing the same thing for a couple of streams. If I can't figure it out I think I'm going to give myself 10 punis. If I can't figure it out in 10 punis, we will have to try tomorrow. And we'll apply this and just, see how it is. Because practice is good either way. But I'm trying to learn a specific thing here, and I have yet to get an inkling. Every theory that I come up with is like immediately disproven. So I really have no clue. I also want to try, I just was thinking about this on the last one. At the moment, like I've got it all carded, and I'm just lifting it off just a tiny, tiny bit to allow me to draft a little more effectively. I don't know if there's any point in that at all, but I've noticed that when I only have a tiny bit of a beard, it's really hard to get it to bite. And I feel like if I do this, it's possible. I will have a better time keeping everything attached to the card as I'm rolling it up, because that's what keeps happening, as it just sort of comes off. Of course, that said, at the moment, it hasn't helped me out. Okay. I don't know how much of a point there is to neatening it up. I've been doing that just because when you don't use a ton of tension, these things kind of want to fall apart. I really don't want them to fall apart. I don't necessarily know if that would be the end of the world with cotton punis, but it's certainly not great with wool. It's not what you're going for with wool, so that's quite a frown. It's the most frowning one yet. I don't even know what the hell I did. Damn it. This is what happens every time. Like, I'll do something different, and then I'll fully forget what it was in between each one. I guess I could write it down. That would definitely take away some time. But that might actually be the way to go, now that I'm thinking about it. My memory is just really not good. This is behaving so far. I spoke too soon. Now it's not behaving. That's how it always goes. I do want to stress that, like, even though I am having a really hard time figuring this out, the yarn is turning out fine. It's not any better or worse, I don't think, than the last couple of attempts. And I've been pretty happy with the last couple of attempts. I just know I could improve. So I'm trying to do that. So, like, I'm not worried I'm going to get a bad yarn. But I am worried that it's going to take me literally forever to figure this out, and I'll go through all my cotton. It's a distinct possibility at this point. I don't know how much cotton we've used. I've been a little bit afraid to measure it. Not a ton. I'm still on like the second handful that I pulled out of the bag. And there's probably a good 30 or 40 handfuls in there. But I'm kind of curious how much I used. I feel like 2 pounds is probably perfect for a blanket. And the seller actually sent just over 2 pounds, which is quite nice. Like an ounce or 2 over. So if I use an ounce or 2 in the experiment, I should have exactly 2 pounds for the blanket, which would be awesome. But also, now that I'm thinking about it, oh my god, that'd be so much spinning. I do think this will speed up quite a bit once I move to wool, or once I move away from the wool warm up, because that takes up the first half hour. Pretty consistently, it takes about half an hour. And then the more I do this, the faster I get in terms of cotton spinning. So I think we can probably get to the point where I'm doing like 2 hours every day and getting about double the amount that I'm currently getting. Problem is the amount that I'm currently getting is very little. Like each stream, I think I've produced between 15 to 20 yards, and that is it. So that means I'd be making like 30 to 40 yards in 2 hours. So I think it's going to be slow. It's going to be very slow. Hopefully not too slow. I don't mind slow, but I don't want it to take literally forever. How much cotton did I get in the first place? Oh yeah, just slightly over 2 pounds. I ordered 2 pounds and I got 2 pounds and I think 3 ounces or thereabouts. I can always order more, but that seems a little hasty, given that I still have definitely over 2 pounds. But I think I quite like this cotton. I'm pretty happy with it, so I wouldn't mind just buying the same order again, because I think it's good quality. Like I'll have to do some wash tests to really be sure, but it feels high quality, and it definitely feels better than all of the roving that I've used by a factor of about 1 million. And I think it's better than the other gind cotton I used. Not by a ton, but somewhat. I like it more. It's more obliging to spin anyway, which is what actually matters. So, and it's pretty nice and soft. It definitely seems to lose most of its softness once I wash it. I'm curious if any of that will come back with subsequent washes or not. I could see it both ways. You're very slow, so that sounds like a lot to you. That's fair. I think I'm used to doing more because I'm used to working with wool on my spinning wheel. And when you're working on a wheel versus a supported spindle, or at least when I'm working on a wheel versus a supported spindle, my wheel is about 30% faster than my supported spindles. And it does vary massively based on size. Like I couldn't spin this at all on my supported spindles. It's way too thick. But yeah, typically I'm going about 30 times faster. I'm sorry, 30% faster. That's a huge difference on my wheel. And also, wool I spin very fast because I've been doing it for so long. So yeah, only getting 40 yards in 2 hours. I know it's chain plied, and the punis are not necessarily the quickest thing in the world to make. They're definitely slower than Rollags, but quicker than what's it called? Quicker than nests. But yeah, only getting 40 yards that's slow for me for wool. But obviously, I need to readjust my expectations a little bit for cotton. Part of it, and really I think this is the majority of the reason it's so slow, is the 3-ply. Because if I'm spinning 100, or if I'm spinning 40 yards of 3-ply cotton, that means that I'm spinning 120 yards of singles. But the issue is I would never feel good using cotton singles for a blanket. Not in a million years. That would not last very long, I think. So due to that, this is slow. It's very, very slow. I don't tend to 3-ply things. And if I do 3-ply them, it's typically due to the fact that it's very thin. And so that kind of means that I'm getting a lot more yardage because it's so thin. So, okay. Just have to readjust every time. So that one, I added very little rolling twist, but a decent amount of drafting. I'm sorry, very little rolling tension, but a decent amount of drafting tension. So we'll see how that goes. I really need to rewatch the stream, actually, I'm realizing, because if I'm announcing it each time what I'm doing, even though I'm forgetting, I could probably just rewatch the stream and write it down. That's probably what I should do. Let's see if I remember to. Behaving so far. It's actually behaving really well. This might be the way to go. This is the most even I've got it so far, with a few exceptions of times when my fingers slipped. And I'm new enough at spinning cotton this thick that that's going to happen anyway. I do wish there was less debris in this, I will say. Like, I don't mind the little bits of seed pods, those are just fine. But the big bits of seed pods are very pokey and a pain in the ass to remove. Because they all have to be removed by hand while spinning. They don't really come out while plying very easily. You can't get them out during prep. Or at least it's not any easier whatsoever. It's definitely easier when spinning it. It's very annoying. I'm sure I'll get a little better at it as time goes on, but VM is just always going to be annoying. So this is puni number 7. And I'm going to try and do the exact same thing on the next one, because I think we're getting somewhere, aside from that long thin spot. Like, overall, this feels like the most controlled prep. Switch. I'll jinx it. I know. I always jinx it. Every single time. The problem is, if I wasn't streaming, I wouldn't be jinxing it, but I want to talk about what I'm doing, and then I jinx myself. Because, like, I know full well that the camera quality is not good enough for anybody watching to be able to visually gauge how bad it is. Like, maybe a little bit, but you can't see well enough to actually see what I'm doing, unfortunately. And so I feel kind of obligated to describe it at least a little bit, because otherwise you'll just get nothing. And then I jinx myself. It's worth it, though. If I wasn't streaming, I wouldn't be spinning. So, okay. Yeah, that wasn't bad. We're going to try and do the exact same thing again and see if it's repeatable. Because if it's not repeatable, that means that there's some other factor going into this that I am not aware of. So fingers crossed it's repeatable. The other thing is, it does take some finesse to actually do that. It wasn't very easy, and I have tried to do it many times and not managed to do it. Just like that, the neat drafting that I was able to do. It's difficult. At this point, I've made what, like, minimum of 50 punis, I think more. And they're still difficult. They're getting easier, but they're still pretty difficult. It does help with figuring it out. That's good. I was hoping so. So I went to, my sister just bought a house with her friend, which is sort of mind-blowing. And I went and visited the house. They're still, like, they haven't even started moving in or anything like that. So it was mostly just taking a poke around and looking at the garden and that sort of thing. Um, but then afterwards, I went to an Asian supermarket nearby. There's a lot of them where I live. They're all really great. But I didn't know that this particular one existed because it's really tucked away. And I bought 6 gallons or 12 liters of coconut water for only $30, which is really good. That's a really good price. But I'm also now like, why am I doing that? Why, why did I spend $30 on that? I mean, I'll drink it, and I've been spending way more on way less coconut water. I've gotten myself addicted to it, as I so frequently do with expensive drinks. So that was a complete fail. I was not able to recreate at all my last roll lag, or my last pony rather. It just started coming off the cards immediately. So, I mean, we'll spin it anyway. But I have a feeling that perhaps the next stream, we might still be doing this, and then also be figuring out perhaps how much to put on. I don't know if we can do 2 at once, so we might just have to stick to still doing this. But I still have to apply all this stuff, so I don't want to do a ton more, being honest. I think this is number 9, and I think we'll leave it at that and then apply it. A few years ago, you couldn't find chili crip. I don't know what that is anywhere. So when you found some, you bought 7 jars, which then lasted like 4 months. Yeah, I think this is going to last me 2 weeks. If I drink 1 every day, which is very doable, I can easily drink a liter of coconut water in 1 day, happily. It lasts me 2 weeks. No, not with the squeaking again. The squeaking. There we go. Chili crisp curry. Ooh, that sounds good. Or chili crisp, sorry, okay. I can't read today, among many other things that I can't do. Chili crisp. I like spicy things and I like crisp things, so that sounds pretty good. Yeah, I definitely do the same thing. I found there's this brand of rice cakes, seaweed rice cakes that I grew up eating, and they're really good and I love them. And I have not been able to find any brand whatsoever of seaweed rice cakes anywhere since I was a kid, like, or maybe since I was a teenager. And I found a brand, like, or maybe since I was a teenager. And I found a brand at one of the stores here, and not only was it good, but it was actually the brand that I grew up eating. So I bought 6 bags of rice cakes, which was really expensive. It was like maybe $1 cheaper than if I had bought them at the store. But I have like a hard time at the moment actually eating things. So finding something that I can consume a lot of and I don't have to prep it at all, and I already have it and it's good for me, is like, that's kind of the jackpot. So I will be spending all my money on that. They had a lot of really good looking stuff there too. I really like Asian food, but I'm also vegetarian, and there's not necessarily a ton of vegetarian Asian food near me anyway. But they were selling mushroom and cabbage gyoza, which sounds really good. I like both those things. For like $6 for a decent bag. Like I could probably get 2 meals out of it, so that's pretty nice. Definitely have to go back there, stock up on some more food. I've been going to some really crappy supermarkets because that's just what's around now. like now that I've moved. And it's been a while since I went to a store and was like, wow, they have like everything I want. It's a nice feeling. When you go where there's gyozas or baos, it's mostly with meat. Yeah, same here. There's usually going to be like 5 or 6 meat options and then 1 vegetarian option if you're lucky. And I also have a ton of allergies, and sometimes the vegetarian option has something I'm allergic to, so I can't even eat it. Um, so I was very pleased. There is a vegan Vietnamese place pretty close to where I live, and the food is really good. It's just like eating at a restaurant is prohibitively expensive these days for me because the vast majority of my paycheck goes to my rent. So I really don't have like extra money necessarily to be spending on takeout. So yeah, I just can't afford to do that sort of thing. But it's so much cheaper if you just get a bag. Like I think it was $5, $5 or $6. Whereas if I bought that at a restaurant, that same amount probably would be like 20. So it's a big difference. All right, flying time. That was a lot. This should be pretty big. I might even be able to get 2 washcloths out of it. Because I feel like oh, hang on. I feel like I could get, I don't know, 1.5, 1 1/3. Oops, dropped my bobbin. On like the other balls of yarn that I've made. I haven't actually, I've just made 1 washcloth and then moved on. And then I'll probably make like a Franken washcloth with all the odds and ends, because why not? But yeah, I think this is big enough that we might be able to get 2 washcloths out of it, which would be very nice. Yeah. Chuck is very good at sounding like other things. He's very talented. 5 sounds doable. Yeah. 5 is much more doable for sure. They also have meat substitutes, though. They just don't use them in baos. The vegetarian or the vegan Vietnamese place that I have been to a few times that I was talking about, they do like their meat substitute in baos. It's not good though. It's really bad. Most of their food is really delicious, but their baos are like disgusting. And I usually like baos. So I guess there's probably a reason that they don't put the meat substitute in there. It seems like the majority of meat substitute, it might just be what this vegan place uses, and maybe other places use tempura, but I've found they pretty much just use seitan, which I love seitan. Addicted to seitan. And I like making it too. It's just a great food all around. But it does not hold up well to steaming. I've found it really doesn't hold up well at all. And they're steaming it, obviously. So the textural issues are super bad. Okay. This is proving difficult to wrangle. I think it's just because my brain is not super online. I know. It's like a bad bao is just so depressing. And it sounds like it's impossible too. Like, how could there be a bad bao? But there are. They're like very dry, very tasteless, very everything that you don't mind about. But all their other food is so good. It hardly matters. This is not very even, but it is decently thick, which is cool. That's still something that I struggle with, getting it as thick as I want it to be. So, wrong way. How can you do a dry bow? I know. Does it do that thing of getting rubbery and chewy? Yeah, it does that too. Um, like the seitan inside gets rubbery and chewy, but the bow itself, dry, tasteless, depressing. Their gyoza are fucking incredible though, and it comes with a sauce that's like, I think it's some sort of maple syrup potentially, and soy sauce and sesame oil is my guess. It's so good. I asked my sister because she orders takeout a lot more often than I do because her rent is quite a bit cheaper. I did all of that the wrong direction. Let's redo it. Every time she orders from there and gets gyoza, I ask her to order extra of the sauce just so I can put it on rice later because it's really good. Okay, we're going this way. There we go. Now we're on to something. Okay. Setting up each of these is like a bit of a pain. Like every time it's been kind of a pain. I'm sure it will be less annoying when I'm doing like full schemes, like totally filling up the bobbin. But oh my gosh, until then, it's annoying. Hello, Chuck. Nope, wrong way again. Wow. Ow. I know. I took her on a walk, which she's never a big fan of. I don't know, like she'll paw at the door, so I'm like, okay, presumably she wants to go on a walk. So I take her on a walk, and then she has like the worst time of her life, and I feel really bad. But it's like she was very insistently wanting to go outside, so I don't know. I do not understand her. And then after we got back from the walk, she was so exhausted, just laid right down on the floor and passed out immediately. Very cute. I keep encountering DM. And I don't know how I missed this when I was spinning it, but like it's very prominent now, and there's tons of it. I guess I wasn't picking it out as well as I usually do. Or I got a particularly VME spot. I don't know. Not a fan. So I've been playing all the stuff that I spun on the middle whorl. I've been playing it on the middle whorl as well, and I don't know if that's correct. The middle whorl is about double the like turns per inch, or turns per inch, double the turns per cycle. I don't know the right word. It's twice as fast. How about that? As the big whorl. So there's quite a difference. There's a huge difference between like the big whorl and the middle whorl, and there's not very much difference at all between the middle whorl and the small whorl. And I really wish that weren't the case. I kind of wish the middle whorl were the small whorl and there's one in between. Because I think I would use that for playing if that were what I had. But since it's not, I don't really want to do the small whorl because I kind of feel like it's not going to be enough. It's going to be really unbalanced, which is not. I'm going for more balanced, I think. Like high twist, but balanced is what I want. Pretty sure. So I don't know. Maybe she assumes this time it will be different. I think so, yeah. That's probably it. I also assume this time it will be different, and it's never true. I don't know what is upsetting her at this point. Like, I know that when we pass by dogs, she gets pretty upset, and that's understandable. But some guy just like walked us up behind us, and she started running. Like I had to like, what's even the word? And to slam the control on my power chair to like try and catch up with her so that I didn't break off her harness or something. I was kind of worried. Luckily, if she runs straight forward, then the harness is not super weak. It's more like she can wiggle backwards out of it if she's very determined. So it helped. But I was like, dude, what the hell? It was just like a random guy. He seemed quite fine, quite normal. Somewhat perturbed by the fact that my cat had run away from him so violently. I know, I had to give her several treats when she got back. I gave her a churro, and then I also gave her just like some hard treats, kibble treats. She still has not recovered from her ordeal. But I am doing this for like enrichment and exercise. And I think it's successful in that. It's definitely successful in exercise, and it's such a different environment from my apartment that I think it's probably pretty good enrichment, even if it stresses her out a little. But I wish it didn't stress her out. I hope that like eventually she'll be okay with it. The part that she really hates is getting to the walking area. It's like I can't just step out of the building and start going on a nice walk with her because it's a really super loud, tons of cars, pretty main street situation. So I have to take her down an alleyway and then we walk down there. And she likes walking down the alleyway, but she does not like the road, which is mutual, frankly. Very mutual. I also hate the road. But it's also kind of unavoidable, unfortunately. All the exits of this building exit onto the main roads. I might just not be doing it often enough. I do it like every couple of weeks because it's pretty exhausting for me, and I don't want to stress her out all the time. And recently the weather has been just terrible, and I don't want to do it on a rainy day because she won't enjoy that at all. So it's not been very often. I think she might just be forgetting like everything that happened in between. Almost done with plying this. That only took like 7 or 8 minutes to ply. It's crazy how fast chain plying goes. Just because it absolutely destroys your yardage so quickly. But I think it's worth it. I'm really liking the yarn that we've gotten from all of these tests. I think it's very beautiful and very functional, which is ideal. It's the very last bit. Roads are scary. So true. I would love to never see a main road again. Unfortunately, I live in the middle of a city, so that's not going to happen for a while, if ever. Flip the cotton back on. Everything ready for the next one. I was sort of considering making a ton of Rolags before I started streaming, and I'm glad I didn't because I don't think that would have worked out. I think making a ton and then spinning them and trying to assess is clearly not the way to go, given how difficult it was spinning them one after another. I wouldn't have remembered a single thing. So that means I'm definitely not going to do that next time. But I might spin. I'm just trying to find the end right now. It's really, I lost it. I might spin up more of this wool in the meantime. I'm kind of in a spinning mood, but my voice is sadly dying. Where's the end? Aha, okay, I found it. I let it get really wispy, which is never a good idea. So yeah, I think we're probably just gonna steam this up and then call it a night. pretty soon after that. I did bring my knitting over here, so I could technically do a tiny bit of knitting. But I don't know how I would position myself so that it would be seen on camera, and it's white yarn. So the definition would be very bad. So I don't necessarily think it's worth it. All right, I'm taking guesses, by the way. How many yards do you think we'll get out of this? Keep in mind that the other ones, with 6 punis, we've gotten between 15 to 18. I think something around there, 15 to 19. And this was 9 punis, so I'm guessing it's going to be 29. And I think I'll be wrong, but that's my guess. 29 yards. I'm guessing 18. Unwashed. Yeah, that's true. It does shrink pretty significantly. Which means I will never actually know the true yardage until I've washed it and then re-steamed it, which is kind of frustrating. My wool doesn't tend to shrink this much. But okay, 18. That's a good guess. I feel like there's a nice big range in there, so it's going to be pretty obvious who wins. I don't know. I think I spun this a lot thicker. Parts of it, anyway, I spun a lot thicker than I usually do. So now that I'm looking at it, I don't think I'm going to win this one. I think you're going to be closer. Stop shredding. That's one thing I really do not enjoy about a chain plied yarn is that the end is always terrible and wants to just fall apart no matter what you do. All right, here's what we got. I think it's thicker than the other ones have been, but I don't remember. Let's count it. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. It's exactly 18. Well, you definitely won that. It was funny. I'm shocked it was only 18. I could have sworn it would be higher than the other ones because I had so many more punis in there, but clearly not. And it seems to have about as much twist as the last one did. Like the last one kinked up about this many times. So, yeah. I think visually it turned out pretty nice, although it's kind of hard to tell before you wash it, I've found. It changes quite a lot. The twists get a lot more defined, and the yarn itself gets a bit more scratchy and a bit more compacted. But I definitely prefer how it is washed to unwashed. So anyway, hopefully I will soon, yeah, congrats. Hopefully I'll soon be done with the washcloths and I can also make washcloths of this one and take a picture and like wash them and take a picture and put them up because I think that will be a cool looking timeline of how fast or no, how good I've gotten and how bad I was when I started. So I'm pretty excited for that. I'll probably work on that this afternoon before I go to bed. But yeah, this was a good stream. Thanks for hanging out. I think we got closer to a conclusion. Definitely more experimentation required to answer the question that we were trying to answer in today's stream, but that's okay. I think some of the other questions also took multiple streams to answer. So I'm gonna head out for the night, but yeah, thanks for hanging out on stream. Have a good one.